Hey guys, this episode is brought to you by Weapon X Holsters, quality handmade Kydex holsters made right here in Southern Utah. You can stop by the store, 1397 West Sunset Boulevard, number 115 in St. George, Utah. Hey guys, welcome back to the Derick podcast. We are in the vault today with I guess a longtime friend would be a good way to put it. Little thing about me, for some reason, and I don't know what it is, maybe we can even get into it on here. I'm going to write it down because I've always wondered this myself. I've always been friends with my friends' dads, and I don't know if it's weird or not. And I don't know if it's like my relationship with my own dad. I don't know where it comes from, but I want to touch on it and just get your thoughts. But this is my main man, AKA Marty Party, AKA Marty, I guess because your real name's Martin, right?
Yep, formal name's Martin.
So this is Martin Koford, Marty Party, or just Marty as most of us call him.
Or a few other things.
Yeah. Whatever we yell at you, you usually answer to. So how's it going, man? How's everything going?
It's going good. Yeah, just
works good.
Work's really cranking out right now.
Good.
Just had a great month. Record month.
Awesome.
Which is good and bad because that just means a lot of people are needing help.
True. In your profession, yeah.
As far as a job goes, it's great.
So Marty is a mental health counselor at, tell me it one more time.
Ascend Counseling.
Ascend.
And Wellness.
Ascend Counseling and Wellness. You've got offices in St. George. You're kind of heading one up in Mesquite. Tell me about that. How's that work?
Yeah, we just opened up towards the first of the year. We got an office down in Mesquite. I go down there right now. I'm just going down there once a week. We're going to get additional counselors down there. We've got a couple of nurse practitioners, psychiatric nurse practitioners that prescribe. So we're trying to create a kind of a holistic type treatment center as we grow, so that we can serve all the people that need help.
That's great. And then you're up here, 4 days a week?
4 days a week.
Okay, in St. George.
In St. George.
Where's your location at in St. George?
It's 1173 South 250 West, just up about. It's actually behind the new Maverick there on the corner of Bluff Street and Black Hill Ridge, or whatever they call it.
Yeah, that brand new one?
Yeah.
Cool. In St. George. I'm just writing that down because I'm going to refer to it later. All right, man. I want to get into a little bit of your story. I think it's kind of guided you to where you're at. And I kind of just want you to really kind of take the reins, but I'm just going to guide us through it. I have spots I want to touch. We've known each other for, so this is Tyson Koford's dad, if you haven't put that together. Yeah. So Tyson's dad, Tyson and I started running together in 10th grade, 9th grade. So we were, 15, 16, 17, something like that.
I remember you had a Honda CR.
Yeah, that CRX.
X, yeah.
Is that what it was called? Yeah, little hatchback.
Yeah, hot rod, rice rocket.
I thought it was a hot rod. Yeah, we did a lot of riding back then, and that's kind of a lot of your background that we're going to get into, but Alex Stout and I started riding four-wheelers, and then Tyson kind of came in with us, and he had his dirt bike, and man, we spent a lot of times out in the mountains and sand dunes, and Tyson smoking me and Alex on his bike, just rooster telling dirt all over us. So
yeah, loving every minute of it.
Yeah, so that was Alex and I's experience a lot when we'd go riding with Tyson. We were just getting rocks thrown at us the whole time. Anyway, man, when I first met you, you were a business owner at the time, I believe, with the nutrition store.
Yeah, the Health Nut.
Yeah, Health Nut, and that was on 700 in
700
Bluff,
South.
around right there.
Yeah, right, that close to that. Yeah.
How did that come about? How did you get into that business?
I've worked in corporate America, grocery stores for majority of my life, and I had just been running some convenience stores for a guy down here. He had a small chain of 5 convenience stores, and I was running those. And it was kind of getting long.
Yeah.
It was kind of grueling, had about enough of it. And then my friend Denley Falk, who I've known when I first moved down here and did real estate, in 84. I knew him from back then, and I did consulting for him for his business. And then he decided he wanted to move on and says, hey, you want to take over this business?
Oh, sweet. So he had it before, and then you came in? Oh,
yeah,
that's
I
cool.
came in and took it over, basically bought him out.
Now, how long do you have that?
I think it was 6 or 7 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
I know Tyson kind of worked there a little bit. And
Whole family worked there. Yeah.
That's cool.
Teach those kids how to work.
Yeah. I'm going to jump around a lot with you, I'm sure, because I know a little bit of background, but we've had so much fun over the years. But I want to back up. I want to talk about a little bit of childhood, and I've kind of got a path I want to direct this. So let me just jump in.
Let's do it.
Tell me about childhood, parents, grandma, and let's just kind of flow from there. And you can go back as far as you want.
It's an interesting experience. So as far as I can remember, I don't remember being originally with my mom and dad together, because I think they split when I was probably maybe 2 or so.
Okay.
And then for whatever reason, I know there were some court battles and stuff that went on. My dad got custody of me, and I ended up living with Grandma and Grandpa.
Did he, or did you just live there?
Just me.
Okay.
And that's all I can remember is I just ended up living there. I kind of get the sense it was because he won the battle. I'm not sure if it was so much having a small son to raise. I don't think that was it. He just didn't want me to be with my mom.
I got you.
As maybe some of that. I get mixed history depending on who I'm talking to. My
Sure.
mom, my dad, my grandma, different versions of that. And so I just lived with Grandma, and Dad would pop over once, just do visits. The main thing I remember is going out, and our connection was going out and either rabbit hunting out on, where's the train? What do they call that out? Where the Promontory Point.
Where's that? What's that?
Northern Utah, where the two,
okay.
Where I think the trains met, and when they were putting the rails down and stuff. That's where they both met, the east and the west.
Okay.
So we used to go hunting out there a lot. We also would go out motorcycle riding. Back then, when I was young, he would just pop by and come on, let's go for a ride. I'd hop on the back, and we'd just take off, whatever.
Okay.
So that's where we really kind of got our connection, was just going out and hanging out, shooting guns, or him trying to buck me off the back of the motorcycle, because he rode fast if I was on the back, or if he was by himself, it didn't matter.
No difference.
It was just wide open.
Hold on.
I'd fall off, and he'd go down the road another half mile, and then come back and say, "Oh, okay, get back on. Hold on tighter next time."
And I'm sure you had helmet on and shin guards and.
Huh?
Yeah, exactly.
They made those then?
And so there was one story that you had told me, and fill in the blanks because it's a little spotty in my memory, but I think it was when you were living with your grandma. She didn't allow you in the house when she was working. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. Where did that come from? And as a kid, was there any, psyche change with you about that, or was it just you were out having fun playing with sticks and rocks?
Their thing behind that is trust. I think they had a lack of trust, because what I could gather, my dad was always popping in when they weren't home and taking my grandpa's tools. Because we'd go out in the garage, just like, where the hell is that tool at? It's like, was your dad around?
So you just kind of put the pieces together.
Yeah. And then as far as being put out, so I guess nothing could happen. It wasn't a matter of safety. It was for just to protect their own, I guess, fears. So I'd sit out on the back. We had a patio and a lawn chair, and I'd get some water and some whatever. I can distinctly remember a bowl of cherries one day. That was a very special day. I got a bowl of cherries to eat, and she'd be gone for about 4 hours.
Okay, and she's working, or she's
working like at Albertsons down there in the snack bar that they had.
Okay,
in Ogden, but and to me that was just like, that's normal,
right?
I mean, you know what you know, so I just kicked back and relax, and it was what it was. I didn't think too much about it.
And then I want to talk about motorcycles, because I think that, and you'll have to correct me, but I feel like, and with Tyson as well, I think I can see parallels in your guys' life that you've brought, and I know Tyson for sure, but I would imagine you're the same, that you've brought strength or overcoming fear or whatever words you want to put to that. And it's kind of molded you in your life, right?
Absolutely.
So when did you start? When did your love for motorcycles come about? How old were you?
The thing, the time frame I remember most when it was like really hit me one day. I was reading a motorcycle magazine. Back then we had magazines, these paper things that you'd get once a month, and then they'd still have 3-month-old news in them by the time you got them. And I was just reading about some of the top racers back then, like Roger DeCoster, for example, and how he was out there winning, and it just struck me as like awesome. And I hadn't really had a lot of experience with motorcycles other than riding behind my dad. I didn't get a motorcycle for a long time, so I just like one day thought, you know what? I think I want to be a professional racer. Maybe 7th, 8th grade.
Okay.
Yeah.
And how long until you got a motorcycle? And how did you come about getting a motorcycle?
Well, it's a little convoluted.
Unless you stole it from someone. I don't know that.
My dad bought me. He said he bought me 2 motorcycles. There were 2 motorcycles.
Okay.
One of them I did get to ride once. It was an old Bull Taco. It was, people may not know, but it was set up for flat tracks. It had special tires on it. It really didn't have the knobbies and stuff on it. But I did ride that once, and then it sat in the garage, and I'd go drool over it. I did have a helmet. It was a really thick wool stocking cap.
Okay, that's what you used?
That was my helmet, and I crashed on it, and it worked.
Yeah, I'm sure. Better nothing.
Better nothing, yeah. So, I remember that. That was really cool, having that bike, because Bull Tacos were like really cool back then. And then he bought me another motorcycle, but probably good thing he never let me ride it. It was a BSA 441. So I probably weighed 70 pounds wet, and that's a gnarly, big. It was designed for racing, but back then 4-strokes were like tanks, 400 pounds worth of stuff. So I never did get to ride that, but it was mine too.
Yeah, you bought that for you.
I started catching
I'm starting
on.
to see a trend here.
I caught on after that. I was like, okay. And so what finally happened is once I got a job, what was it? I might have been closer to 17 because I was graduating from high school. I got to buy my first motorcycle.
Okay.
And then that's kind of
where everything started.
Yeah. My dad did let me ride a motorcycle for a while that he had, a Suzuki, a 185 that was road legal, is an enduro, so I could ride it to work if I was having car issues or something like that. And I remember riding it in the middle of the winter, just loving every minute of it. And he didn't want me riding it around much, so when I would go to work, there was this little set of hills, dirt roads that I would get on and for 5 minutes and just race around really fast and then go to work. Then when I'd come home in the dark, I'd race up the same thing and hit it just enough, but not that he would know. And so anyway, I ended up getting my own bike. It was a 77 Yamaha IT 175 for anyone who is into motorcycles. It was one awesome motorcycle. So rode that day and night. I was working graveyards, and so I worked graveyards and rode my motorcycle all day, every single day, and it was totally awesome. And then we, then eventually moved into racing.
It's funny you say about winter. So I've got a Kawasaki 900Z, I think is what it is, little naked bike, and if it's not like 60 degrees or warmer outside, man, I'm in my truck.
St. George mentality, yep.
I always laugh and I always picture my brother Jason had a Rebel 250 Honda Rebel, just a little thing. I mean, basically it was a scooter, right? And he worked in Hurricane and we lived in Washington. So it's a, 15, 20 minute bike ride. And if he could get it up to speed, and
you tuck down really low.
Yeah. And so he was working at Verizon in Hurricane. So he was driving out there and I was doing the mail routes. And so I was driving out there also. And I don't think he was living at home at the time, but there were 2 different times I passed him and I looked over and I'm like, is that Jason? As I was going by him. And one day it was like raining and the wind was blowing like crazy sideways, like it does in hurricane, hence the name hurricane, or hurricane if you're proper. And I would always like laugh at him because I'd be like, what are you doing, man? Just go buy a car. But the only thing he had was that bike. It was the only transportation he had. And so, yeah, rain, snow, wind. I mean, he was going. And I had owned a bike for, years here and there. And yeah, if it wasn't like perfect conditions, I was getting in the truck. I mean, it wasn't even a question. So yeah, I've always enjoyed riding my bike, but I didn't grow up with it. And my dad kind of always wanted a motorcycle, and he ended up getting like a 86 Harley. And I mean, we had that thing tore apart more than he rode it, trying to fix it. And so it kind of put a bad taste in my mouth for motorcycles. I was like, well, I don't just want to fix them all the time.
Right.
You
had a CRX to do that with.
Yeah. I had a Honda that was falling apart left and right. That primer, it was painted primer.
I do remember you worked on that thing quite a bit.
All the time.
Well, let's see, you worked at the auto store. Didn't you work at an auto store?
Yeah, Checker, O'Reilly's now.
So you had a good source for cars.
Yeah, I was just handling them all the time. Yeah, so I bought that thing, and the thought was, it had like the Japanese racing motor in it, but the body was trashed, and so it had a really good motor, the trans was brand new, clutch was brand new, all that. And so my thought was, okay, I'm just going to buy this car, and then I'm going to pull the motor and put it in a nicer car, and then just have like a really nice kind of sleeper fast Honda. And I think I drove that thing for like 2 weeks, and I started thinking like, I don't think this thing's running right. And so I started diving into it, and like 2 of the cylinders were bad, and I lost the clutch on it. And one of the guys I was working with at Checker, the store manager, he was a gear nut, he knew Hondas really well. And so he offered to rebuild the whole thing for me. And so he's like, yeah, and he was in it, he's like, oh, this is the B16 motor. This thing will run a 10.4 if we put this piston and cam in. I mean, he knew he was way over my head. And so I said, well, what's it going to cost me to do all this? And we priced it all out, and it was like $4,000. And, it was like a 17-year-old. That was a lot of money to me.
Yeah, back then that was like, 20,000.
Yeah. And so I was like, and he's like, I'll do it all for free. He's like, I just think it's fun. I'll just kind of do it on the weekend. So if you got like a couple months, I'll rebuild this whole thing for free. And I think I ended up throwing him like $300 or $400, which is all I had. And he rebuilt the entire thing. And I thought I was going to have this screaming track machine, and that thing never ran right.
Always
had issues with it. And the biggest thing was, anyone that knows Hondas is like the VTEC in a Honda motor. Yeah. And so it hits like the power band, it revs up higher, the valves all change, right? And it basically messes with the timing. And I never had the right wiring kit. I never had the right computer. I never had it. Nothing matched because it was like a Japanese motor.
So it's just like a crate motor they stuck in there and just
and they had nothing else with it. And so like the wiring harness was all spliced and electrical taped everywhere. And I had been in it and stripped a bunch of wires that were not being used, and it was a nightmare. But yeah, I mean, it was still quick for what it was.
Yeah.
But it was never what it should have been. And I remember it was a Super Bowl Sunday. I was working late. I closed the store. I was driving to my brother's house to watch Super Bowl, and I didn't have a defroster. I didn't have an AC. I didn't have any of that in that car, and it was snowing.
Nice.
And the wipers are going as fast as they can, but my windshield's all fogging up, right? And I ended up actually down from your house. I hit a puddle, and my car was so low to the ground, the water got in my air filter, and I like sunk the motor.
Nice.
And so it just shut down. I towed it back up to Checker the next day, and we pulled the spark plugs and just turned the motor over, and it was like the Bellagio fountains, man. It was just shooting water everywhere. And we ended up salvaging it. It didn't end up bending any valves or having any major catastrophic issues. And I still drove it for, I don't know, like another year after that. And I sold it to a buddy, and then I think he blew it up. But Yeah, that was a fun car, man. I have not talked about that car in a decade.
That's all I heard was like, and we'd see you drive around. That's Derick's car, and I never really got to experience it. And then it's like, well,
little did you know your Avalon would have smoked that thing.
Exactly. It's like, what's up with that car, man?
Yeah, I moved through cars a lot. My truck I have now, I've had longer than I think any car I've ever
It's
had.
a record.
Well, I had my Jeep for a long time, but I moved through cars while I had my Jeep. Like it was my constant, and I moved through other cars. But yeah, I just kind of hijacked your whole story right there.
No, that was fun.
That.
Yeah.
Yeah, that good old that. I remember I picked a girl up in that thing for a date, and I went to her door, knocked on her door, walked her to the car, and at the time it was having issues starting, and so I didn't shut the car off. And so it's just sitting there idling, right? And that thing sounds awful.
Did it have like a loud muffler?
Oh,
on it?
yeah. It was really loud. It was like as ricer out as you could be. It was straight
Back
piped
in the day,
everything. Yeah. And I remember her looking at me and she's like, "We're taking that." and I thought I was cool.
Yeah.
I thought the car was cool.
Yeah, man. Check this out.
I was like, "Yeah, look how loud it is," right? And I remember her being like, "We're taking that." And I was like, "Yeah." And then she gets in it, and I'm just and it didn't have door handles.
Dude.
Oh my gosh, dude, it's all coming back to me. So
Here, slip through the window, babe.
So it had door handles, but the guy had like the poppers. Have you ever seen those? So it's like instead of hitting unlock on your car, it's to these little actuators, and it would pop the door open.
Oh, okay.
So you'd hit the button and it'd pop the door open.
Okay.
But he never finished wiring them. And the only way that you could open the doors, you had to reach into the fender well.
Oh, nice.
And there was like a wire in there that you had to pull, and it would pop the door open. And so I think I even like propped her door open before she got to it, because I knew it was kind of janky.
Sweet.
So yeah, oh my gosh. Yeah. I remember she looks at me and says, "We're taking that." And I was like, "Yeah." And she gets in, and this thing's 2 inches off the ground. And I shut the door and I walked over to my side, and I hadn't prepped my side. So I'm like reaching up into the fender, and she's like, "What is this clown doing?" I only went on one date with her.
Yeah.
Long story short.
Yeah.
Luckily my wife didn't know me back then. Amanda said that before, because we went to school together, right? We both went to Pineview, and at the same time, and we didn't know each other. And I'm like, it's probably a good thing. I was a little different kid back then. Anyway, I do want to talk about motorcycles for a chunk. I mean, I think you have I think you've got stories to tell. I think you've got learning experiences through it. I think it'll be cool for me selfishly, because our family learned life lessons and strength and fear and all that stuff through traditional sports, where I think people get tunnel vision with what their experiences are, and there's other things you can learn through different experiences. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
So if you've got anything off the top of your head, maybe we can run through some of your racing stories or history, or, I mean, from what I understand, you're pretty good. So
Yeah, they're pretty good.
yeah. So tell us a little bit. I mean, how far did you get, and is there a ranking system?
Yeah. So I'll just kind of go a little bit chronologically so my brain can stay with myself. The thing that I think back about is when I started riding, and I'd go out. I finally got to go out with my own bike with my dad and his buddy. And those SOBs were always in competition, going so flippin' fast. And this is my first motorcycle, really. It was mine. I'm figuring out stuff. And they would go and they would get on it. And I had to learn to become an expert tracker. I learned the different knobbies, and I learned to look at their tires before we'd go riding, so that I could find them as they were a mile or two ahead of me.
Because they're gone.
And there's always, different branches of the trail and stuff like that. But literally they would ride wide open, and then they'd stop every so often, and then I'd find them.
Yeah.
So it was kind of cool. It was like, that was a huge learning experience. Because I've tried that with one of my kids, and they started crying. It's like, "Why aren't you helping me?" It's like, "What do you help you? Why would I help you?"
Just look at my knobbies.
Pick up the bike and go. That's how I learned. So yeah, it was just a source of, stay up and go as fast as you can, or get lost and die.
Yeah.
I mean, I didn't know. I mean, I didn't worry about it either. It was just that was what you know, and that was my norm.
Yeah.
And so apparently that accelerated my learning curve very dramatically as far as being able to ride a motorcycle. Their motorcycles were twice the size, CCs of mine, so twice as fast, and they were 3 times faster riders. And so I learned very quickly to be able to push and to obviously stay up. That's the key, and go fast. So eventually started thinking, hey, I want to race. And one thing my dad was into was flat track racing. So it's just basically dirt, flat, smoothed out dirt on an oval. And you probably have seen the late model car races that some of the NASCAR drivers do. It's just flat, fast dirt.
Okay.
And you go around it as fast as you can. You have to run special tires and everything to hook up. And you go through the corners as fast as you possibly can. You fly down the straightaways. You throw the bike sideways for a brake. They didn't have any front brakes, but they did have rear brakes. But you really didn't use the brake. You just threw the bike sideways and just slid to slow your bike down.
Wow.
And then when you got where you thought you was ready to go straight, then you just start rolling on the gas and roll. And my first one was at a little inside, I guess they used to have like auctions inside this little arena. I don't know, it probably wouldn't amount to the size of it would, but it didn't seem much bigger than a driveway.
Okay.
It was all dirt, and I got out there, man, I was so pumped up for my first race, and took cables. My bike was kind of tall, and flat trackers are low because you want to keep them low to the ground, and I got, was it chain? I mean, it fits in with your car. I got this chain or a rope, and wrapped it around to get it a little bit lower, dropped the front clamps down a little bit, not thinking too much if the tire hits the top of the fender, you're going over the bars, but that didn't matter. Anyway, went out on my first race, didn't do really well, but it was so much fun.
Yeah.
I just fell in love with it. And so, yeah, that was my first experience with racing. And then that was during the winter. That's why it was inside.
Okay.
So we could race in the winter. There was no heat. There was no nothing. You almost died of carbon monoxide poisoning because there was no ventilation. But it was just so awesome to be part of that. And then...
So was there any... I'm just curious, like your first time, was it all excitement where there was no... Like, was there any negative thought about not doing well? Or was it all just jacked?
I always go to win. I'm just going to win. I don't know where I get that from. But... I'm going to go out there and win.
Yeah.
Because I didn't know any better.
Right.
So, yeah, it was just pure adrenaline. I'm going to go out. So I was very humbled after that first one.
Sure.
I'm like, didn't know what to do with that. Just, okay.
Is your dad there? Is your dad helping you through it?
He kind of supported as far as being there, and he'd help me work on my bikes. And he would... He was very, very good at making those 2-stroke motorcycles fast. Okay. So he knew he had all his little secrets, and so that was one fast. I could beat, back in the day, I could beat a 750 road race bike.
Wow.
On just a straight drag race from light to light on a 175. Wow. So it was stinking really fast.
Plus you weigh nothing.
Yeah, so and I was a skinny fart. And so we got it all tuned and built, and then put some different tires on it. And the outdoors came, which was in northern Utah, north of Ogden. Anyway, it's called the OCA Flat Track, and that's where I started. And went out, and that damn bike was so fast that 170. So I rode in the 250 class because it was a 175. There's no 175, and it's too big for the 125. So I rode the 250 class, and next thing I know, I'm smoking them off the line, just like, holy hell. I'm gone. It's like, now what do I do? Yeah. So I don't remember all the details of those races, but started winning. And it was for the most part, I'd get some guys in front of me once in a while, but for the most part, the novice. So you go novice, amateur, and then you go to the amateur, and then you become an expert.
Okay.
Or local pro, whatever. So I worked my way up through the novice and the amateur with, I think it was within the first, year or two. Each year I moved up a class. And finally drove to California to pick up an official flat track bike. Like, they have special frames, everything.
Yeah.
Motor and suspension and all that stuff. So I got one, and my brother got one, and we got in the front. I don't know if anyone knows what would that have been, like a 78 or 79 Chevy Love. It's like, if you could fit 3 grown men in there, it's nothing short of a miracle. It's just a mini truck. And we hopped in that and drove. It was somewhere near San Jose, California. So 3 of us, my dad, my brother, and myself, we all got in the front of that truck and drove through hell. We went up over the Sierra Nevada Pass.
Okay.
Over the north, what is that, I-80 that runs across there? And dude, it started snowing, like blinding. They had the road shut down. And it's like, screw that. The guy came out, waved us down with his little baton, his light baton, and says, "You can't go through." And we're looking at each other. No way. We're too far in.
Yeah.
So we waited for him. As soon as he turned around, we took off and followed this semi that would have been chained up, because you had to have chains to make it across. So the snow was probably about 2 feet deep going across there. I just had some fat wide tires on it, some custom tires that I put on it. And we're following the semi, and I'm going crazy because they're only going 20.
Are you driving?
Yeah, I'm driving. They're going 25 miles an hour.
As they should be.
Yeah, as they should be, the idiots. And it's like, I couldn't stand it. So finally it's like, okay, I'm going to try to pass these guys. So I pull out and get into that was the only track. There was no other track. And I get out there and I just start floating.
Yeah.
And it's like, everybody just says, you just pull in. It's better to get there than to hurry.
Right.
So we got there early that morning. We drove all that night to get there. Got there that day, met the person who was selling the bikes, bought both of them. And of course, my dad's an adventurer. He likes to go out and adventure. So it's like, well, let's just don't go straight back. Let's go down the entire coast of California, all the way down to LA, catch 15, come up through Vegas, and then all the way back up to Ogden.
That's a journey.
Dude, in a front of a Chevy Love. And it was like 30, I think we went for 36 hours non-stop, other than to stop and eat and just take a little bit of break. Ironically enough, we got just maybe Payson and another huge whiteout snowstorm. I was exhausted.
I bet.
You're
driving the whole time? Or are you rotating?
My brother wasn't old enough, so I think my dad drove a little bit.
Okay.
But I hate just setting.
Okay.
So I'd rather drive if I'm going to do anything. So I did the majority of the driving. So then we hit that, and I thought I was going to kill someone by Bountiful. It's like we only got like 30 more miles, but anyway, that was one hell of an adventure. My brother, he was younger, but he was sleeping in the middle of us, and then his head kept flipping over on us, and then I'd whack him, and his head would go over to my dad, and my dad would whack him. It's like, should we throw him out?
Seriously, let's put him in the bed.
Let's just throw him out and leave him. Anyway, I got sidetracked on that story, but I got my first official flat track bike that was custom made, and I was in the expert class. So then I'd won a whole bunch of trophies, but when you go to the expert class, you just race for money.
Okay.
It wasn't much back then, but you got to race for money, so that was way cool to get paid to race. Although,
so are you traveling all over, or is this all in northern Utah?
So at first,
okay,
just the first little bit, other than we would go up to Boise.
Okay.
Boise, Idaho had a track back in there that they it was just amazing. It was on a hill, and they used motor oil back when you could get away with it on the dirt, and it just made the best track in the world. And it had a slant, it had a downhill and a right, and it had a big Indianapolis-style bank corner that you
Wow.
just fly through. And a lot of the pros, the national pros, would show up there. So I got some experience riding. And one of the times I was riding, one of the pros. So in pros they did a similar thing back then. They had the novice pro, and you went to just a national pro. And I got to race with I'd be out on the track with some of those guys, racing, and was able to stay with them and even beat one of them that was in the class above me.
Wow.
So
and you're like high school age still?
No, I'm out of high school. I'm probably 20.
20? Okay.
20 years old, because I didn't get my bike till I was like I say 17 or 18. So then that really started clicking on me, like, oh, maybe I got a chance here to do this. So I applied for my professional license, I think when I was about 20, 21, and got accepted. You have to send it into the sanctioning body, which is the American Motorcyclists Association, and then they approve you, and then you get your license back, and then you can go sign up for races. So we traveled. Then I started traveling a little bit more. Didn't have a lot of money, so it made it hard. A little bit of help with sponsorships, not a whole bunch, but I did race motocross at the same time because the flat track was just during the summertime.
Okay.
And so I'd race motocross during the spring and the fall if they had races. And it was, Idaho, went back to Ponca City, which if anybody knows motorcycles, it'd be comparable. It's still there, but Loretta Lynn's is the big amateur national race. So on motocross, went back to Oklahoma, Ponca City, Oklahoma, and raced. There was 1,200 racers there compared to like if we got like 100 at a local race. It was great. So it was just like such a dream come true. We just all got in the back of a regular van that was hollowed out with a trailer on the back of it. And there was like 4 or 5 of us plus 2 adults, older, I should say, adults. We were theoretically adults, but that's questionable. And I ended up getting 10th in the nation.
Wow.
Up there. So that was my first taste, like, oh, wow. And that was on motocross. That was what I wanted to go professional in. That was just to keep me busy.
Yeah. Keep you tuned in.
And loved racing. So had that, and then started traveling on the flat track circuit a little bit. Went up to Oregon, Washington, Idaho, California. I mean, and it was mind-boggling to go race at the pro level. So you're really fast at a state level, means you'll probably be lucky to take last place or even qualify in a professional level race. That's the disparity is insane. And so I go down to Ascot, which is no longer, but it was a world-renowned track, world-renowned flat track. Knew nothing. I had some gears. I threw on this gigantic gear because it was a half miler, and that's pretty big. They have a half mile and a mile.
Okay.
Or they have smaller ones, but at the pro level, it's the big track for the bikes I was riding was a half mile because it was a 250, and the 750s rolled the miles.
Okay.
And so I'm there, and I'm sitting down, and this is so old school. Now you go into the pits, and they all got semis, and it's all roped off, and you're peeking around the corners. Well, I sat right next to Gene Romero, pitted right next to him. We're in lawn chairs, and our bikes are just on kickstands that we propped them up on, and a couple of milk crates for your spare parts and your toolbox. But the guy that I was with, he was a legend.
Yeah.
And I'm sitting there just like, wow, this is so cool.
Yeah, I'm in.
I felt comfortable. It wasn't overwhelming like I thought it would be. And he turned out to be a really nice guy. You're kind of intimidated at first because it's like, in my world, that was top celebrity. And it was like a total mind blowout because I tried to gear my bike. Didn't know much about it. Put a gear that I don't know if I ever got. They had 5 gears, but I geared so tall that I don't think I ever got out of 4th gear. So it was a total mess. But I got the experience.
And it was
like, a dream come true to be able to, for that first time, sit down there and I went all by myself.
That's awesome.
Through the old Chevy Love, and
it's not like it is now where it's like an event before the race, right?
Yeah.
Like it wasn't like that back then, right?
Yeah.
Like you're just all kind of hanging out.
And
is there people like walking around and like you're still greeting people and
saying hello, and they can mingle in the pits. You don't have to have a pit pass or anything. They just would walk in and out, and it was really casual and a lot of fun. And so, that was good memory. And then hit some more races. South Dakota, what is it? Was it Sturgis? Sturgis is the big thing. They had a short track and a half mile there. That was totally amazing.
Yeah.
Knocked myself out there because the guy I was racing against put his foot. So you put your foot out. You have a metal shoe on your left leg, on your left foot, to skim it along, and that's how you steered your bike and slowed it down, and how you were able to leverage the grip on the tires. And the dirty dog put his foot out in front of me to block me because I was coming on the inside.
Jeez.
Well, I didn't have a ton of experience with this level of racing. You don't mess around. You can mess around. I was I wasn't a dirty rider, but I could be aggressive with my local riders and didn't get in any trouble. You got aggressive with these guys, and
you get taught a lesson.
They didn't knock you out. They're like Mike Tyson. And he stuck his foot out in front of me. It's like, F you.
Right.
Like, whoop. Well, you're going 60 miles an hour in the middle of a corner, and you run over a foot.
It's not great.
I don't remember, really.
You know what happened?
I remember standing up just in the middle of the field, because like I said, it was a half mile, so it was almost like a size of a football field inside. And I'm just looking around. It's like, where am I? And I just kept standing there. I didn't know where to walk. I didn't know what to do. And one of the guys that had rode with us to help us wrench and take care of us comes out and grabs me. He says, "Come follow me. Come on, let's get out of here."
he's seeing birds.
Yeah. So anyway, but again, just that whole experience was just, I just loved the experience of racing.
So there's no fear in any of this?
Back then, not really.
Not really?
Not really. I mean, nervous, yeah, but yeah, not a lot of fear for the racing part.
I mean, why do you think that is? Like, I mean,
I just grew up that way.
Yeah, I guess so, yeah.
I just grew up that way.
I mean, I guess that's what I'm getting at.
Yeah. On my bicycle,
yeah,
I would go hit the biggest jump. And back then they didn't have any suspension or anything, and you just keep jumping further and further until you smash certain parts on a certain bar, and like, okay, I think I'm done.
Talking like this?
I'm done with that for now. I reached my limit, and so yeah, just at a high sensation seeking, adrenaline junkie type personality.
See, and I wish I wasn't this way, but I'm opposite. I grew up cautious. I grew up, don't make that mistake. I grew up, watch him, don't do what he did. And that's how, that's all I've ever knew.
It's the best way to learn by others' mistakes.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, you're right to an extent.
Yeah, to a safety point.
But so it's always like interest me of like, in this podcast, I've always mentioned my son and raising him and trying to get insight from people who have raised kids. And I always think like, is it a good thing for them to have fear of things that maybe they shouldn't, or like to be careful about things that, do you get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like building fear where maybe it's not necessary, if that's the right way to say it.
Yeah. From my insight, fear does serve a purpose in some cases, but I think respect of this thing can mess you up. So just be aware. Don't go into it totally naive and blind, but just know that there's some danger there, and then go experience the danger.
Yeah,
because it's going to look different to different people. Some people, like my brother, hurt his ankle once after riding our whole lives. He got a very minor injury. My youngest brother, and he never rode again.
That was it.
Because he had prioritized his family. He didn't want to jeopardize anything related to his family and being able to provide for them. And I think as far as staying racing, I probably, me and my next oldest brother, had eventually raced in the same class. He started racing long before I did, and did well. So I guess I saw him doing well. And my dad was always working on the motorcycles, so if I ever went over there, it was about motorcycles, or they were working on motorcycles, always trying to make it faster. And then going out to the track and listening to the other people like talking about how fast that Koford motorcycle is and all that type of stuff. And so that was my point of reference. That was my worldview. Speed, fast, winning. I didn't know any better.
I mean, is that kind of... Did you draw that attention from an outside source, or do you get what I'm saying? Like, is that what you were doing because you loved it, or did you get attention from your dad or your brothers or other people because you were good at it?
No, my family was more of a sore spot because of the marital position my dad was in. I had two stepmoms. And neither one of them had anything to do. They were from my understanding, part of the reason I didn't get to grow up with my dad. I tried once with his second wife, and she was just abusive and nasty and mean. And all I remember is like she was a biatch, and I didn't like her, and she didn't like me. Very young. I mean, I'm elementary years. I don't know what grade, but. I suffered a lot of trauma. I got locked in. I don't know why I'm sidetracking on this, but I'll go there anyway.
Yeah, let's go.
When she would go, when I was staying over at this one house that we lived in, that I got to spend a few months at a time. When she'd go somewhere, she'd lock me in the downstairs basement. So this was just a utility room that had the water heater and I think a washer and dryer in it. And it was just straight downstairs. It was made. I don't think it was as big as this room, so maybe an 8x8 room. And I'd just be sitting on the stairs. Only difference between her and Grandma is I didn't get any cherries.
Yeah, where's your bowl of
I
cherries?
didn't get any water, and
Bullshit.
I didn't get any cherries, man. If you'd have just gave me that, it wouldn't have been so traumatic.
Yeah.
It did have one window that I could look out to get some light. But
so was there other kids in the picture, or
my brother, my younger brother lived with them full time.
Okay.
But it's kind of crazy because my dad married the younger sister. His second wife's younger sister was his third wife.
Okay.
So the family mixture was very interesting.
Your aunt is now your stepmom.
Yeah, I am my own grandpa. So, yeah.
But so it seems like fighting through some of that.
Yeah.
That childhood trauma, you could release a lot of that in motorcycles.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. I was always like, even at a young age, I was like kind of just naturally drawn to curiosity, which meant getting in trouble.
Sure.
And I just remember the joke that I had later is like, I thought my name for a long time was Little Bastard. You little bastard.
Right.
And, but yeah, thinking about it, it did make me stronger. I didn't know it was trauma. I just knew she was mean and that I didn't like it. And, but my brother was there, and then my dad worked. So it made it kind of challenging if he wasn't home. There was another time I tried living, so went back to Grandma and Grandpa's. There was another time I tried to go live with them. Actually, there was two other times. And one time I remember I had taken off on my bicycle and went riding all day long because she was staying at home. And I just like to be out. Well, I'll be danged if I didn't come home, because I knew Dad got home around 5, so I kind of moseyed my way back home. And I happened to get home right after my dad had walked in the door, and I heard some like loud voices. And so I just thought, I was kind of nervous, so I just crouched behind the front step and just kind of listened. Your damn son was a little son of a bitch today. He was doing this, he was doing that, he was doing this, blah, blah, blah. And I'm going, I was not home. And this is when it's like my first realization is like, I was not home for like, other than to get up, eat breakfast, and leave for the entire day, and then come back home. And I'll tell you what, I walked in the front door just expecting, like, I didn't know what to expect, just to get in trouble. And I got a beating. I remember to this day, there are these nylon cords about, I don't know, maybe quarter inch thick, that they used for blinds back then. And I got beat till I thought, I didn't know. I just didn't think that way, but as an adult, I wanted to die.
Yeah.
How long can I be beat? Now,
Right.
could it have been 30 seconds, or was it 2 or 3 minutes in a fit of rage?
The kid in the moment.
In the moment, it was like an eternity. And I just, it never left me, of like that rage. That my dad, like I sensed rage. And
Was he not that type of person? Was he not?
he could be a dick. Like, he'd work on his car and smash his thumb and look over and say, "Fucker,
Yeah.
you little fucker." And it's like,
Relax, bro.
what did I do? And it's just part of that, like, I don't know what it did. So that was kind of the norm.
Okay.
But when we were just hanging out with him by himself or with my brothers, it was always fun. Jokes, laughing, always competitive.
Got you.
Always competitive when we were on the motorcycles. So yeah, I guess I learned a lot of punishment, pain, pushing through. I guess that's part of what I learned.
Yeah. Through motorcycles and racing and being competitive. But I mean, the reason I asked that question about it, was it to gain attention from your dad or an outside source?
Yeah, we got sidetracked.
And I just wanted to touch back to that because I feel like that is a major reason why people do some things that they do instead of what they think they should do or what they should actually do. Like, they're seeking an outside source of love or an outside source of attention.
Yeah.
And that's why I was curious. I mean, I've experienced that multiple times in my life. I think everybody has, whether you can realize it or not.
So initially, it was just, part of it was I really enjoyed winning.
Yeah.
I enjoyed being competitive, and I was good at something because I had friends that wouldn't let me ride their motorcycles when we were younger because I was a dork and I would crash them. So they never would let me ride them. Like, don't let Marty ride your motorcycle. So but I did thoroughly enjoy it. It gave me the satisfaction of being, if I think about it, maybe better than someone else.
Sure.
Rather than just being the pure competitive spirit, which I don't know if I fully believe in that because we all have a little ego in us.
Sure.
And so having that opportunity to get a trophy, you stand up on the stage, they announce your name, and you get to kiss the trophy girl. So back then,
nice. Now I get it.
So you get some good. Sometimes you got some macking in up there.
Yeah, now I get it.
There's some advantages there, and but yeah, there was probably just not that I expected my dad or anyone in my family, because no one really supported it as far as other than just my dad. But still, I was at that age, I was on my own. I got myself there, and he took my brother and he bought their motorcycles. I had to buy my own. So there's a little bit of animosity and confusion. Okay. Like, why do you get a motor? Why do my other three brothers get motorcycles bought for them, and I got to buy my own?
Yeah.
Through this whole time. And that hit a little bit later. But it was frustrating. So it was enjoyable to be able to go out and, I guess just be a winner.
Be good.
Yeah. And it was me.
Yeah.
It was no one else. I mean, other than my dad would do my motors once in a while, I did all my own work on my motorcycles and all that type of stuff.
No one carrying you, no one cheering for you, no one.
No. Yeah, got a little help on parts and stuff from from the local shop.
Yeah.
And that was about it. So, yeah.
That's cool. I knew you were good, and I knew that you had raced, but that was about the extent of it. So that was kind of cool to hear those stories with you. I guess I've got a number of places we can go from here. Since we were talking about trauma and that's what you're based in, maybe we can just kind of transition to some of that. Well, let's back up just a touch. So, when I was running around with Tyson a lot more and we were at the house a lot, your house, where we were champion foosball players.
Foosballs. Yeah, you used to piss me off.
I pissed a lot of people off. It's foosball, man.
2 against 1, 5 against 1. Derick still wins.
It didn't matter.
What?
It's your table. I'm convinced of it because I've been on other tables and like I'm still pretty good, but like I'll get beat every now and then. I think I went like a year and a half and I didn't get beat once.
Yeah, it was insane.
Yeah, and it was like even just by luck, I just never got beat. And there was times I'd be losing and I'd come back and win.
Yep. Oh yeah. It's like we got this and we didn't.
You and Tyson against me all the time.
Always. Just to have a game that wasn't slap, slap, slap. Yeah. Okay, done.
So anyway, when I was running around, I knew you'd owned your own business. I knew you'd worked other jobs. I knew you'd raced. And then what I was exposed to with you is you were working with DirecTV. Like doing installs, right?
Dish Network.
Dish Network. Okay. Yeah. And I was thinking like, why is he doing this? And like, I didn't know what you were doing in the background, but, so you did that while you kind of put yourself through school to become a counselor, which, and you're how old at this point? I mean,
my life fell apart at age 50. So got divorced, went broke, moved into that place that you're talking about with Tyson. And
dude, we had some times, man. It's all flooding back to me right now.
It was good times. It was the party house.
Fun times. It was the bachelor pad.
It was a bachelor pad. It was totally decked that way. People would come in, like home teachers would come in and say, dude, this is a bachelor pad. You can tell you're not married. Yeah, baby.
Yeah, car posters everywhere, racing stuff everywhere.
Yep.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. It just started, it just flooded back to me, all these memories that we had at the house. Anyway, so you'd got married, you got divorced, broke, moved into there, and then keep going.
Yeah, I went from the top of the heap thinking, oh, man, the way we're going and doing, having the business, doing investments. We had we probably had a total of 7 businesses at one time and doing investments and real estate, mostly real estate type things. And some, like I said, consulting, did regular business consulting, I did computer consulting. I kind of really enjoyed being a kind of a jack of all trades. Mm-hmm. And then that just blew up. I mean, in 1 year, I went from, what do they call it, riches to rags.
Yeah, the other way.
Very, very humbling. And I had to sell. Okay, now think about this. I drove trucks for pickup trucks.
I remember.
I love driving pickup trucks, and I'll be damned if I didn't have to drive a little white Avalon. And I felt very small, let alone, they say size doesn't matter, but when you're in a truck driving on the road, people treat you way different than in your little car. Yeah. So anyway, it's like, okay, after the divorce, it's like I'm going to start completely over. Sold the business, the health food stores, had 2 of them, and just thought I'm going to find a grunt job, is what I called it, one that I don't, because I've been managing since I was 19 years old. And it's like, I'm sick of everything. I don't want to do any of that stuff. I want to start over fresh. And I was really lost on what to do. And then all of a sudden, it was like I was getting ready to transition out of the health nut. And I'll be damned if, like, within 2 weeks before the transition was to take place, a friend of mine in Richfield was talking to a Dish Network guy and told him that I was looking for a change in work. And next thing I know, I get a call to go do an interview for Dish Network. It's like a perfect grunt job.
Yeah.
So it didn't want a lot of responsibility, but little did I know what I was getting myself into. But yeah, I had to really work my butt off hard at that job, learn, like a learning curve, like almost vertical, because I work on motorcycles, working on homes and running wires and stuff like that. And I really got depressed because it's like, oh, dang, this really sucks. And I knew it was an interim job, but I didn't have anything for the future.
Yeah.
So at the time I was going to counseling, and then one day my counselor says, you know what? Have you ever thought about being a counselor? I was, hell no.
Right.
You know, first thing is I thought about going back and getting a master's degree many years ago. And it's like, why would I do that? It served me no purpose.
Yeah.
And so you have to go back and get a higher degree in order to become a counselor in the state of Utah. So it's like, So I thought on that for about 3 months probably. And then like the reason he thought that I'd make a good counselor is because he had counseled some of my employees.
Okay.
And by the way they talked about me and my managing style was kind of what you do in counseling.
Sure.
You help people and you help them reach their potentials and help them deal with their problems and, you know, be part of that process and watch them grow. And I love that. As I grew older, I liked that more than the business itself.
The relationships
yeah.
and the growth, yeah.
And being able to be a mentor. I really enjoyed that process and watch people succeed through that. So it's like, well, okay. My last time I attended school was 20 years ago. Got my bachelor's when I was around 30 years old. So it's like, but that's my mentality. It's like, okay, if I decide I'm going to do it, it's like I am afraid, but I know I can do it. I don't know how I know I can do it.
You just have that confidence behind it, though.
That brain set I've got is like, I just can do it.
I mean, is it confidence or is it just a blind? I mean, how would you explain that? Because I don't know if you'd call it confidence.
I don't know either, because there, like, if you were to ask me, like, do you think you could be president of the United States? And I would say, yeah, I think I could.
And if you were then you'd figure it out.
I'd figure it out. You know,
like if you were a gearhead or motorcycle guy and you went and started running satellite dishes, you'd figure it out.
Yeah, I don't know. It seems to work out that way.
Yeah.
What I found is you don't have to know what you're doing at the beginning. You just need to move. You got to make change. You don't know if it's right or wrong in the beginning sometimes because you've never experienced it. So decided to go back because of that. It's like, I do enjoy that. That's the part that really brings me that deeper satisfaction. And so anyway, it took me 3 years of working full time, and so I would do work was always between 45 and 50 hours a week. So you'd put four 12s in usually is about what it ended up being, and then I would get 3 days off. One, I'd separate them. So like Sunday, I'd just try to relax and chill out. And then I'd have some
foosball.
Yeah, get my butt kicked in foosball and party a little bit.
Yeah.
And then
sorry, I messed you up.
Right.
Your 3 days off. You chill on Sunday.
So then I would do school. So I took Wednesday and Thursday off, and I'd spend all day Wednesday and Thursday because Thursday night was school. So then I'd read during the week, and then I'd have to write papers.
Okay.
So then I'd spend those 2 days writing papers. So I was 7 days a week going, 6 days a week. So I did try to relax that one day because I'd be so exhausted from work.
Sure.
And then for 3 years, total, if I'm in, I'm in.
Right.
Did not take any vacations other than maybe a short weekend trip to visit family during the holidays or something like that. Because school, they didn't give you breaks.
Yeah, it was demanding.
It was just I didn't get the semester set up like traditional schools. I went to a for-profit school, so it was classes back to back to back to back to back to back, and an accelerated pace, so that you could just go one night a week and still work and carry on life. So I did that for 3 years, and then got into started counseling at that time.
And you did that. I'm just curious because I know people go both ways on it, but that structure worked for you. But did you make it work for you, or was it kind of tailored to your schedule with the accelerated, just hammering it out?
Ask the question again.
With the way that school was set up, did that cater to your schedule more, or did you force it to cater to your schedule with how it was accelerated and you just hammered it out?
It all just fell into place.
I mean, that was better for you?
It was better. It was the best thing I could do. I wouldn't have been able to do that in a traditional school because you have to put school first.
Sure. Okay.
And I couldn't. I could give them equal, but I couldn't put it first because I needed to work. I was my sole provider. As well as
Well, and you're coming off of really just to kind of unpack everything you were just talking about, you're coming off of, you just came off a cliff.
Yeah.
mentally, financially. You've got your son living with you. Yeah. I mean, I was unaware of all of that at the time, right? Like we were just going to hang out at Marty Party's house,
just having a good time.
And so like, I mean, I've always looked up to you, but like knowing that was everything you were going through and you were still pushing forward. I've always looked up to you going to school late in life and doing what you're doing. I've told Amanda, I've always thought if I ever did anything school wise, because I never wanted to go to school past high school. I think I would get into some sort of counseling because I mean, it's like this is a sort of counseling for me. This is a therapy for me to get on here and do podcasts and talk to people. And I talk a lot, so that helps. But anyway, I've always looked up to you because you did it. Like I've talked about it a few times, but you did it. And not only did you do it, you did it after you had to hit the reset button.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, I just wanted to express that, like, I know that now, and I look up to you even more now because of what you did.
Thanks, I appreciate that.
But yeah, so let's get into a little bit of the counseling stuff. You know what? Let's touch a little bit of blended family, if you're okay. I kind of wrote that down here. So you've been married twice.
Yep.
Been married twice. So Tyson's mom, and then the second divorce, right?
Yep.
Okay. And even with Tyson's mom, you'll have to correct me because I don't know how it all falls in, but there's two sisters and then Tyson. So was Jenica yours?
No, Jenica was a stepdaughter.
Okay.
Yeah.
So from the beginning, you were in a blended family.
Yep.
Okay.
From the start.
I mean, what's the dynamic of that, and what? It's so common now, I guess, is why I kind of want to touch on it, and I think you'd be a good person to kind of expound on it. And but I mean, what are your thoughts? What was it like going through that? What was it like raising a step kid, even though I'm sure you accept her as your own kid, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And she was actually at my store today helping us with some videos.
Oh, cool.
So anyway, kind of just go through that. If you have any thoughts that you want to bring up or anything you want to bring up, and if you don't, we can move on. I just thought I'd touch it with you.
No, the funny thing, I used to love watching the Brady Bunch. Okay. So that was a blended family show from a long time ago, and I could kind of relate to blended families.
Okay.
Not very deeply because I was young, but watching the Brady Bunch, it's like that would be cool to have my own Brady Bunch when I.
Okay. So you were open to that from the beginning.
Like from the beginning.
Okay.
It was just like, yeah. So when the opportunity came, the kind of the irony behind with Jenica, which was the first stepdaughter, is I was her godfather.
Oh, okay.
I was her godfather already, and had experienced her being born and growing up and all of that type of stuff. And
that's cool. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
You were like a part of her life from day one.
From day one.
That's cool.
And hung out and knew her from then. And then so the assimilation into my life with that it just flowed.
Yeah.
It wasn't that big a deal. I mean, yeah, there's things about being a dad that I didn't do very well because, I had some misunderstandings about parenting and how to handle somebody who has more delicate feelings, because we were pretty rough and tough.
Yeah.
With the boys and stuff like that.
I think that's a generational thing, because I would say that my dad was the same way.
Yeah. Oh,
you
yeah.
know?
Yeah.
I mean, stuff that you're talking about, I'm like, yeah, I mean, my dad's told me similar stories.
So got through that. A lot of the biggest challenge, honestly, was her biological dad making up promises that he no way in hell was or could keep.
Okay.
It just wasn't. I knew him for a long time. It wasn't going to happen. The problem is she's a small young girl. I don't know, maybe 10, 11, 12, something like that, when we moved into St. George, and he promised her a Camaro when she turned 16.
Wow.
So we're talking like 6, 7, 8, 9 years of this little girl dreaming about her wonderful daddy who never came and visited her, who never paid child support, who his mom, Jenica's grandma, was the one who initiated any contact whatsoever, and then forced Paul to come over to visit, who's her dad, to come over and visit. At least that's my outside version. because he just wasn't involved. No phone calls, no anything. So dealing with that was very frustrating.
Because you're there to witness it and pick up pieces?
Picking up the pieces.
Okay.
Jenica would come back, and Grandma was so freaked out that Jenica might accept me as her dad, that from my understanding, she'd come home like a zombie.
Huh.
So she'd go for a visit, and she would come home and just sit in her room like this, just blank for like not a solid 2 days, but for 2 days, she just sat in her room, and that's not her.
Sure.
Just kind of staring at the
I
wall.
wouldn't think that's normal with most kids.
And one day we find what's going on? And she finally told us, it's like, Grandma told me that to never forget that Paul's her real dad and that Marty isn't.
Wow.
In those kind of words.
Sure.
That's what came out. And it's like she was just traumatized because I think she was like 2 years old when I think when Bonnie and I got together, 2 or 3 years old. So she knew me more from a cognitive standpoint and recognizing and interacting than she did her own dad.
Yeah.
And so to hear that was just, at that age, there's no way cognitively to process that at that age. So dealing with that was very tough. So we had to set some real strict boundaries with Grandma. We never had to really worry about Dad because he was just non-existent, other than making false promises that ended up breaking her heart, really disappointing her. I mean, I may be speaking too much for her, but anyway. But from my outside experience, just watching that and dealing with that was difficult, and then so that created more challenges for her when she hit her teen years. I think there was a lot of emotional stress and trauma going on with her that she didn't know how to deal with, and so
I mean, how could you, right?
Right, you can't. You don't have the capabilities, but it's trapped inside of you, and so. But yeah, I had fun playing with her. I used to dress her up. I was doing real estate down in St. George when I first started, so I had lots of free time. I'd dress her up and put makeup on her and then take her down. Bonnie worked at Albertsons down there on Bluff when it was on Bluff Street where Restore is.
Yeah.
And she'd just look at me and oh my God, Marty. And I'm thinking, what? This is so cool. Yeah. This looks like a little doll. So anyway, always
like a little doll.
I enjoyed it, and then on and then we had Mandy and Tyson, and then they all seemed to fit together pretty good.
Yeah,
because it was always just like, we're just a family. Let's just be a family, and I tried to think I was being as fair as I could.
Sure.
Probably biased on that, but tried to be aware of that. And then on the second marriage, we really made some agreements going in to be on the same page. Her children were, I think the youngest was like 8 or something like that when we got together, maybe a little younger. But we really made a commitment to focus on togetherness as parenting. And I think that it was good as far as our parenting and working together with the kids. I felt really good about the way we handled most all of those things. We would talk about them. We would work together. Her kids really accepted me really easily because their dad was kind of he wasn't a very good dad.
Okay.
And was kept away because of some of the issues he had. So they were doing supervised visits. So there was a lot of tension around all that. So it was pretty easy just to look like a good dad.
Yeah.
In that situation.
And they were probably wanting that. And
they
accepting it. Yeah.
Yeah. And so got along great. Taught the girls how to ride motorcycles and 4-wheelers, and taught all the it was Taylor, Madeline, and Spencer. Taught them how to ride motorcycles and 4-wheelers, and that's what we did as a family because that's what I enjoyed growing up, is that camaraderie, whatever that word is.
Camaraderie.
And they got it. And being hanging out and just chilling, and they seemed to enjoy it. I obviously loved it. And then teaching them, this is how you do it. And then they would crash. And we laugh when our kids crash.
Yeah.
And then you see if they're okay.
You think there's something to that with kids laughing at it? I mean, the reason I ask is Amanda and I do that.
Yeah.
So when Will falls or hits his head, I mean, he's at 18 months, but when something happens, my fear is there's not a lot of, I don't know if the word's compassion. I don't know if the word's empathy. I don't know what the word is, but like there's not a lot at our house.
Yeah.
Like with Amanda to me to Amanda and Amanda to me or us to Will. Like there is to Will, right, as a baby,
Right.
but like on the surface, something happens and we're just like half the time I'm like, yay, and I'll clap and he'll pop up and go do his thing,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And I see other, friends as kids or whatever, and I'm not saying this is, scripture here or anything. It's just what I've kind of observed a little bit.
Words according to Eric.
Yeah. And so it's like,
Or Derick.
you would see kids that, they would fall and mom jumps up and runs over. Are you okay? Okay. And, and then they're carrying on and then we'll be in the same room with Will and he'll fall and we just kind of look at him and he looks at us and he pops up and just goes on doing his, regular life.
And that's what you're teaching him.
Well, but I'm like, I don't want him to think I don't care that he may or may not have gotten hurt.
Yeah.
But it's not even a thought right now to him. He just pops up and does his own thing.
But you're still teaching him either to go into this dramatic, screaming and yelling, and like they're not hurt, but that's what they've been taught as to that's how they get attention from when they're hungry and need some milk or whatever. They cry.
That's what it is.
And so this way is like, it wasn't like necessarily intentional, but because that's kind of how I grew up.
Mm-hmm.
But we're also teaching them to be able to like check in and like, they know if they're hurt or not. If they're really hurt, you're gonna know it.
Yeah.
And you give them that minute, and you're laughing because they're funny little creatures to watch, right?
They're hilarious.
And they trip you out all the time. It's like, what the heck? And but I think from a professional standpoint, you're creating, because that's who we learn from is our parents.
Sure.
They're our number one source. And so to be able to show them like, oh, this is can be kind of funny. But at the same time, we're concerned and we love you. But yeah, that was pretty stupid.
Yeah.
Or whatever, they're learning.
Well, with my mother-in-law was there. Terry was there one day and Will had fell, whatever, bonked his head, whatever it was. And she observed me being like, just kind of looking at him and, he kind of just popped up and did his thing. And she's like, wow, you guys don't like really go coddle him when something happens. And I was like, no, I'm usually just like, you bleeding? You good? And we move on. And she's like, well, you're nicer than me. With my kids, it was, do you have a bone sticking out? So she was like,
it one level further.
Yeah, she's like, is there a bone sticking out? And I just started laughing. I was like, yeah, I guess I thought my level was high, but yeah, you're a little higher than me.
So that's awesome.
Yeah, I mean, like raising kids, and I'm very, very new to this whole thing, right? And I'm still trying to figure it out. And when you were talking about a little bit of your upbringing, I think part of my fear of having a kid, because I'm on record saying like I probably would have been okay not having kids. It was more of an Amanda thing, and then I got on board. But I think some of that comes from I don't feel like I got a positive, fair shake at what an example of a dad should have been.
Yeah.
I think that's an accurate way to say
Yeah.
it. My dad was great until I was about 10 to 12. And that's when his mental decline started. So that I have a fear, it holds me back, and I don't love that because I like to kind of conquer my fears and push on to the next one. But that was one of my fears of having a kid was like, I don't think I had a great example of it. So, and that goes back to how we started about grasping onto my friends as dads, right?
Yeah.
And so I remember this one time, I'll tell a story just to kind of back up what I'm talking about. I was at a friend's house. I was at Jimmy Morris's house, and his dad, Shane Morris, was kind of my first dad that I kind of grasped onto as a kid. And so I would have been 10, 8, 10 maybe. And it's something as simple as this. I was screwing on so I spent a lot of time at the Morris's house. I mean, I slept there 3-4 straight nights, and Shane he still today, he has a gecko pest control. And so he would do like normal house sprays, but he'd do a lot of termite stuff. So where you're tenting the whole house and fumigating the whole house. And so me and Jimmy would go help him string up all the tents and roll them up and put clamps on them. And we would tent houses with them on the weekends. And I loved it. I loved just like being able to help him. I loved learning it. I loved like being on the roofs and going through it all. My first exposure to entrepreneurship was him, because we would go work all day. We'd go home at night. Marcel, his wife, would be cooking dinner, and he'd be sitting at the little ghetto computer in the side of the kitchen making phone calls for the next day. Hey, just checking on, making sure we're good for 10. Hey, just making sure we're good for 11. And I saw that, and I recognized it, and it stuck with me my whole life, these little experiences I had with him with running a business. But anyway, back to what I was getting at. So I was screwing on a jug lid with Shane one day, and I had cross-threaded it, right? And so I wasn't putting it on straight. And he says, hey man, let me show you a little trick. And he's like, just twist it backwards till it falls in, and then you can twist it in. And I'd never been shown that, right? It was a simple thing. Yeah. And it wasn't days later, I'm at home, and it was a gas can. I was screwing on a gas can, and I did that. I back threaded it and then threaded it on. And my dad's like, I said, hey Dad, let me show you something Shane taught me. And I showed him that. And he like instantly got like very upset. And he says, what do you mean he taught you that? And I was like, oh, he showed me this, and I'm excited, right?
Yeah,
like, I'm like, like, look at this. I learned this new skill. And I don't blame him. I talk about him on here quite a bit, and he was who he was. And I think he did his best. And I can't blame him for that. But I remember he got really mad, and he said, he didn't teach you that. I taught you that. And I was like, and I'm thinking like, no, I'm pretty sure this was like 2 days ago. Right. And I'd had multiple instances with him like that, but it like, I think it's important for kids to understand that even as a 30, 40, 50-year-old dad, like you're figuring it out and you're doing your best. And I thought that my parents were the cream of the crop growing up. They knew everything. If I could be a fraction of what my dad was, I'd be successful, and that was the view I had. And I think it's extremely unhealthy for kids to grow up that way. And so if I can convey anything to Will about being a dad, and it comes from those little stories and those memories I have of mine, is like, hey man, like I'm figuring this out too. I'm not perfect. I will mess up. There are going to be things that I'm sure I'm going to regret as being a dad, because I'm just doing my best out here, and that's all I expect from you. I need you to do your best, and as long as that's what you did, hey man, we're down the road, and we're in a positive place. But I don't know. Do you have any thoughts? Do you have any experiences with stuff like that? I don't want you to dive in too deep with any. It's crazy. We're coming up on an hour and a half. So
that's what happens when you start partying with Marty.
I know, Marty Party. What are your thoughts on that? Do you have anything you kind of want to throw in, or maybe an experience that you've had recently with work or yourself that may tie into some of that?
I just think in general, we're way too hard on ourselves. We have so many expectations from whether it be family or society. The thing that we lose track of, and you've probably heard a lot of this from Tyson, but it is about recognizing yourself and loving yourself for both your strengths and your weaknesses. And it's like clients come in, they say, okay, I need you to fix me. It's like, well, then you need to go find a new therapist or counselor, because I can't do that. But I can be here with you and help figure things out and maybe point out some directions. But if we can really just be more gentle, I've had success, I've lost success. I'm just in a place now where just being Marty and trying to be reasonably true to myself. I still got a lot of stuff jibber jabbering going on, but it's like, well, okay, let me just be present with that.
Yeah.
Let me accept that that's where I'm at, even if it's not where I want to be. Because why is it before me? Why do I have this child that's like this? What opportunities do I have? What opportunities do they have? And can I teach them, if it's with children, to really learn how to not be so afraid of everything? Because the fear creates a need for control, and nothing but ourselves is in control.
I mean, that's me to a T.
Yeah. And so that's a tough life. That's a churning meal. That's the hamster treadmill.
Yeah. It created a lot of, it still does. I mean, I'm far from cured, but it creates a lot of anxiety in my life. And you have to get to a point where you're just like, things are going to happen. How can I, what's my reaction? What's the lesson to learn? What's the moving forward? And I think people need to cut themselves some slack, man.
For sure. Because you carry that into your marriage.
Yeah.
And then you've got these battles going on, and it's usually because somebody's been afraid of being honest and vulnerable. I hear that time and time again. And a lot of people say, well, I'm just who I am. I just accept totally who I am. It's like, yeah, but you don't.
Yeah.
Because you wouldn't say that if you did.
Yeah, exactly.
It wouldn't have to be announced publicly.
You wouldn't have to tell me.
Yeah. I would just know that, and I'd be fine with it. And so, yeah, just having that that space to spend with yourself, and since I'm older, it's like I used to think, you died by the time when I was really young. Like if you live to 40, you need to retire by 35. Because you're going to die by about 40.
Yeah.
I don't know why I thought that, but just because it seemed ancient.
I think 60 is my thing.
And now I'm 62. It's like you still having the similar experiences because I still have my history. I just have the ability now to look at it differently, and I've had to do some healing, some really intense healing that I didn't even know existed through some help of some facilitators. To remove some deep embedded fear that used to just sit right below my chest bone, my upper stomach, and it was always just there. And that's what I called my anxiety spot. But it wasn't. It was my fear spot from trauma from inside the womb. And science now has shown that trauma starts in the womb.
Yeah.
Because the chemicals are being
Still
secreted,
there.
the fear, the cortisol, and adrenaline, and all that stuff. And obviously, the babies experience those chemical reactions, and so they don't know any idea what to do with that, and they're born with that, and then they continue to grow up with that lack of understanding, and then they become adults, and I start kind of just going back in time, not to blame, but to understand. I can't blame. There's not too many parents that are intentionally, even parents that screw up royally, that are total dickwads. They still want to love their children. They just don't know how. They've had them taken away. They've gone to jail. They've lost them. They've lost their parental rights. But in their heart, they can't manage themselves. They can't figure out themselves. They can't love themselves. So therefore, they can't be present for their children. So they usually turn towards addictions to numb all that out. But they still have that great desire for the best for their child. And being unable to do that, they turn on themselves, and then they spiral downwards. So being able to accept that if that's where you're at, then what can you do to heal that and accept it with love and understanding, and be able to communicate that to your family, or because we're so used, especially, I won't get too deep into it, but we've been taught to hide a lot of stuff because we're going to be judged by it.
Yes.
I don't want anybody to know, but if that's a part of who you are, then you can never be fully yourself around those close people.
That's a lot of growth I've had to go through in the last 14 years.
Yeah.
It's not their fault. I'm not blaming. This is just what happened. Growing up with a dad and 3 older brothers, and it's very common in our family to joke and to put each other down, and we call it joking. Other people would probably call it, I don't know. Anyway, trauma. But I never knew how to process that. And so, I don't think anyone likes being laughed at, but I would get angry if I was laughed at. If I was the butt of the joke, I would get mad. And I dealt with that when I was an early teenager just by leaving the situation. And so if we were playing a game and I lost, or I was the butt of, they played a lot of games where someone was the butt of the joke.
Yeah.
And my dad's family still to this day does, and I don't even want a part of it. And so I would just leave. So whenever my family was playing cards, playing board games, playing whatever, I'd just go downstairs in my room because I didn't want to lose. I didn't want to have, like one of my brothers is notorious for like stretching the rules. And so, you know, if you're like putting one card down, he would put 3 down, 2 underneath the card he was putting down, you know, so he just kind of like had ways to get around it. And I always felt like I was the butt of the joke, and like I would get teamed up on and they would laugh at me. And so stuff like that I've had to get over because, and this is part of it, this, you know, exposing, being vulnerable and talking about things I've been through is part of it on the podcast. But, and that's probably the biggest step I have taken is this, but, I'm losing my train of thought here, but being laughed at, being joked at, how did I get to this? Just growth in general, I guess, being okay with being laughed at, being okay with, being wrong, being okay with not being able to control every situation. Cause I am a type red control, as your son will know more than anything. Yeah. And I know it's because I have insecurities, through my life that has made me be that way. But it's also pushed me a lot because, if there's going to be someone to blame, it's me. Yeah. And I know that. And so I don't want to put myself in the position where I can blame you, because I'll even take control of the blame. But it's pushed me in business to kind of be where I am because I've had that, I would say it's negative. I mean, it is like a negative feeling. But I've had that negativity pushing me to where if I do fail, which I feel like I rarely did because I was so controlling and thought of every way it could possibly go wrong. But if I did fail, I'd be the first one to be like, that was my fault. I messed that one up because I didn't want you to take that control from me and say it was your fault.
Wow.
Is that interesting? I mean, it's funny because I have these talks with Tyson. Yeah. When me and Tyson are together, we kind of get a little vulnerable and have these thoughts back and forth. And, but yeah, I mean, I think for myself, that's been a big thing of I'm not perfect and that's okay. Yeah. I'm going to make mistakes, and that's okay. And in my business, I've seen where I've taken ownership or where I've, you know, hey, let's let this ride. I think it's a good idea. Let's let it ride, and kind of backing off a little bit of that control. And I'm still working on it. My anxiety's gone down a lot. I sleep better. Wow. I still crush caffeine all the time, so I'm still working on that one. But I've seen my life change where I've been able to let go of some of that anxiety, and grow from it. Yes. You know, and put myself in new positions, controlled positions where there might be some fear, but I can push past it and accept that there's fear and then accelerate it to get further. Does that make sense? Yeah. Sometimes I feel like I ramble a lot, but I try to make my point 3 different times about the same point.
That's because you need to feel heard and understood.
There you go.
I'm with you, brother.
I want to ask you this because you right when you said it triggered me to kind of talk about it a little bit, and I don't know why, but so I want to. Addictions. You talked about it. People will fall into addictions. Do you think all addictions are negative? And I know it's kind of a loaded question, but I guess there's no wrong answer.
I mean, the outcomes with addictions usually are represented by negative outcomes, usually, whether it's Mountain Dew for the next 20, 30 years. You know, people can become addicted to exercise. When the only challenge with the addiction part is how is that rolling over into other areas of your life in functioning? Okay. So if I'm a workaholic and I'm making $1 million a year, that's wonderful in one section.
I was going to say guilty, but I'm not making $1 million a year.
And so finding that balance, because the addiction process can be with anything, just even just obsessing because you have anxiety and control factors that you can't control.
And the reason I kind of bring it up, and it's funny because Tyson and I were doing safe deliveries this morning, and we kind of got talking about this. Is and I still don't know the answer. And so that's why I kind of wanted your input, but addictions have such a negative term tied to them that I think people, when they think about addictions, they think about drug abuse, they think about alcoholism, they think about whatever. But I also think that it can be working too much. It can be like I love my wife, love her to death. I would say that like I'm addicted to loving my wife. You know what I mean? You got a little background on us. Like we work pretty well together. We have a great relationship. Part of that, I think, is because we both work so much. Well, we're not always together.
You're independent.
Exactly. We're 100% independent.
So that's the secret. Is like you should have, probably, I don't like to say those, but it's really necessary to have your own individual life presence and in any relationship, or especially in a marriage. The hardest times I'm watching now, it's kind of interesting as older people are allowing themselves to come to counseling.
What do you mean older people? What do you mean by older people?
Like people that are retired, I should say.
I just
but it's mostly, it can be from 40 to 80. But they're people that are retiring, and now some of them are retiring early, and they don't know what the hell. I have a guy who's 40 years old and retired, and he's going insane because he wants to go build like 8 more businesses, not because he needs any money, but he doesn't know what else to do because he worked, 6-7 days a week, 12-hour days for his whole life, and his dad did a similar thing, and so it's just like he doesn't. And so he's coming in, going insane, and his wife says, I would like to have you present for these later years of our lives. We don't need this, we don't need that, but they're together 24/7. So it's like, we'll try to make special nights. Well, it's hard to make date night special when I've been around your butt all day long, and I'm really sick of being around you. Because no matter how much we like someone or love someone, even ourselves, some days it's like, I really don't want to be with me. I want to be in my head today. I'm tired. I just want to check out. And addictions.
Yep.
They can build a lot of strength. It's like anything. What do we do with the opportunity that's been given to us? Whether it's not a matter of whether it's positive or negative. The polarity has to be there. The pain versus the pleasure. They have to be there. You can't have one without the other, because you wouldn't know the other without. You wouldn't know pleasure without pain. And unfortunately, pain seems to be the greatest motivator, more so than the pursuit of happiness. We say that, but usually it ends up being the pain that finally gets you to take that step that normally you may not have taken if you're comfortable and in your happy place.
Yeah. You're kind of just opening my mind up to everything, right? Because when you're saying that, I'm like, but why is that? Is it because, like pain and fear and whatever else word you want to put to it, like why is that more powerful than having pleasure and having satisfaction or whatever other opposite you want to put to it? Why would pain be? And I guess I'm asking you because I'm just thinking through it right now, what your thoughts are with it. I guess we don't want to be in pain. Having pleasure is great, but we don't want to be in pain. I guess that's where it would come from.
I went there myself. I used to think, oh my hell, why do we have to have emotions?
Yeah.
Why? Then, duh, your life would be very bland. If you were just happy all the time, you wouldn't know it. If you were just always in pain all the time, that would just be your norm. Like we said, growing up, this is just my norm. That's how it was. For some people, it's like, oh my heck, that's really horrible. But you're going, was it?
Went through it.
I don't know. Yeah, it happened. The opportunity we have in this physical realm is this, that to my knowledge, again, I don't remember before and I don't know the after of this life yet, but there's no other dimension other than this physical body that we get to experience such a disparity of emotions. And I have a little circle to help people figure out what those are, under categories of joy, anxious, angry, and like people come in like, I'm either happy or I'm angry. I was like, no, that's ridiculous. No, you don't understand me, do you? I'm either happy or I'm angry. And then as I get to know them, they'll share this, and I'll point out, no, that's different. That's frustrated. That's sadness coming out. But you turn everything into anger. It represents the aggression part. And it's like, if you understand that these are emotions and they just need to be felt, you can't fix your emotions. We can retrain our cognitive processes, but we have to be present with our emotions. That's all they want. So when you're having your childhood trauma, we've got to figure out a way to be able to be present with those emotions, because when you're little, they didn't have names. You didn't know what to call them.
Right.
You may not even know how to talk yet. But as you get older, it doesn't matter, because these are just words we've made up.
Sure.
Like there's languages, but people recognize, ah!
Right.
Those are universal. So we can use noise to express emotions that we don't know what to call them, but we feel, and we're not thinking about them. So here's an interesting concept. You have thoughts, emotions, and when you combine those two, you develop a feeling. But by itself, an emotion is pure. It doesn't become good or bad until you attach a thought to it. And then once we attach that thought to it, we start judging it. And once we start judging shit, it usually ends up, for the most part, going negative.
Sure.
When it's really just being present and having the experience. And people I didn't have any idea till a few years ago how to just be objectively present. So it's like trying to create an out-of-body experience, not literally, but just like, can you get out of your own shit long enough to see this wonderful individual who is myself in this pain? And if I were their best friend, which I am, what would I say to this wonderful person that I love and care about so much? And you would approach it so differently than on things than how you're trying to avoid the pain. I would tell them how much I love them and how proud I am of them for going through this process, whether it be their addictions and destroying their life or whatever it may be. And it's just like, I still love you. Those behaviors aren't representative of your heart and the love that you have for others and yet don't recognize in yourself. And being able to learn, and it takes practice to be able to go to that place called dropping into your heart space, or Tyson's probably talked about that, dropping into your body. Because I try to separate those two, even though they're all in the same system.
Sure.
And they're locked in together. But if you can start to separate them and become objective, you can look at this wonderful person that you are, that I am, that everyone out there listening, you're all wonderful people. We all have, 99.9% of us have great hearts and want to be loved and love others. That's the basis of a lot of life experiences. It's just love and understanding. But whether that comes with pain or with joy is what? It's like, it doesn't matter. It's like, well, I don't want to be in this pain. Well, apparently there's an opportunity here for you to do something with this pain. What do you think we could do with that? Chronic illness is horrible for people. I deal with that because it becomes so hopeless. But you're watching them as they surrender and accept that this, for today, is how my life is going to be. So I can either wad up in a ball and feel really bad about myself every day, or as I can, be able to go out and experience life, even though there may be a physical price to pay of physical pain, but I went out and had some joy. Or I can just sit home and feel okay most of the time, doing nothing. Well, for me, I probably wouldn't want to be alive for very long if that was my choice.
See, it's funny because I talk about Amanda's a traveler. She wants to go places. I mean, she's been to Europe. She's gone to Mexico. I mean, like, her and a friend went to Mexico, stayed in hostels, like, sketch. And I'm like, I just want to sit in my room with the lights off with a Mountain Dew and a string cheese. I mean, that's like,
there you go.
That's
Life is good.
that's my dream right there, with my phone off. That's the new one I've added, with my phone off. And so when you say that, it just, because professionally or being an entrepreneur, as you would know, I guess I'm preaching to the choir here. You have to push forward. You have to adapt. You have to pivot. You have to you're always pressing, or at least I am, and correct me. I don't want to speak for you, but I'm always pressing. I'm always out of my comfort zone. I'm always, if it takes 12 hours that day, if it takes 14 hours, 18 hours, that's what I'll do, and I'll do it. And what I'm getting at, and I think a lot of entrepreneurs feel this, is it comes with a level of disappointment when you set those lofty goals. There's a lot of entrepreneurs that are like Grant Cardone's thing is like 10x. Like if you want to make $1 million, you should be making $10 million. Mm-hmm. And then when you only make $2 million, you feel good about making more than one. Like that's kind of how he goes off of it. And so you set these goals, or at least I do. I set these goals that are almost unobtainable. And it's hard for me to keep that in a professional place. Okay, this is what I'm getting at. Let me unpack this a little bit. So for me, professionally, for entrepreneurship, for my businesses, I put it in a place that it's almost unobtainable so I can push it further, because I know that's what I need to push it further. It comes with stress. It comes with anxiety. It comes with, what's the word I used earlier? Like being let down. It comes with these things also with success. I mean, don't get me wrong. I've experienced success, what I would say is success, in the last couple of years, especially with our safe store and everything. Yeah. But I have a hard time keeping that on the professional side and not my life side, and not my relationship side, and not my time with my son side. And when that trickles over to spending time with my wife, spending time with my family, my in-laws, all of these things, in my mind, I'm still setting these unobtainable goals, and it hits me harder in my does this make sense? It hits me harder in my personal life than it does in my business life, because I feel like I should be prioritizing and actually hitting these goals. Does that make sense? I've never really unpacked this, so I'm not
see what you're saying. I think that the challenge of having that is I'm going to assume there's a deeper emotional connection overall with the family. Yeah. With your wife, with your child and stuff like that. So I don't know if I'm going down the right road, but they are important. Hopefully they're more important, although you need the work to sustain the family, but hopefully your family's more important than your work as far as trying to keep that balance and that perspective. But there is nothing to attain in your family. Release the need to attain and bring in the opportunity to be present and to be vulnerable and to love.
I'm not great at being present because I'm always projecting the future and I'm always pushing. I guess that's one of the core spots of what I was just saying is, and I guess that's kind of how I got there in a roundabout way, but I'm awful at being present. And a lot of it's my mind's just running on forward. Yeah. And it's hard to sit in the living room, have William on my lap, playing with trucks, that's hard for me to do. And I don't know. I hope I made sense there. I hope I didn't ramble too much. I've never really unpacked and voiced any of that before, but awesome. Sometimes I just feel like it's like a letdown. Letdown's not the right word. I used the right word earlier and I can't bring it back to my mind now, but, disappointment. Yeah. Thanks, Mal. There's like a disappointment, almost shameful, where in my business, I don't have that. I guess that's what I'm trying to decipher is I feel like I should have two different categories of this, and they leak into each other on putting too much pressure on myself Does that make, maybe that's a
Yeah,
better way
that makes
to say
total
it.
sense, because you're the common denominator. And if you can live your business life in continuity with your family life, in other words, your core values, needs, passions are being met in both arenas, that balance comes automatically, because you're staying true to not achieving this and that, but just being this, being present, checking in on yourself, not judging yourself, but saying, how am I doing as a dad? What are some areas that maybe I can check in on? Where would I like to spend more time? Because if you're laying on your deathbed tomorrow, are you going to want to be moving to safe? Oh, God, I want to be moving to safe. Right? No, I want my child on my lap, and I want my wife right next to me, and I want to enjoy, because I've got 36 hours to live. I want to be with them straight, nonstop for 36 hours, touching, feeling, embracing, communicating, because that is usually the most important thing when it boils down. And we can always find time for that, because we're forced to. Somebody has an emergency. I don't have time. Nobody has time in society today. Yeah. Every couple I come in that has a problem, they don't have time to work on the marriage. They don't have time. They don't even know what their marriage is supposed to look like. We have a business plan. You have projections for your business, don't you?
Yeah.
Yeah. And you're checking those daily, weekly, monthly, yearly. Yeah, baby. And then you go to your marriage. Did you sit down and write down, this is where we'd like to be in a month, 6 months, 1 year? What does that marriage look like in the grand scheme of things? It's a living document that you can change. You write it down, and you kind of look at it, and you talk about it, and spend, Gottmans, who I've trained under, spend 5 hours a week focused on nothing, not hanging out, but focused on your marriage, because you're the foundation for your child.
Sure.
And so making that marriage strong, making you strong first, okay? People, that's selfish. Well, depends on your perspective. If your gas tank is empty, or you got a quart and you give somebody else that quart, you're the old whatever air mask story.
Yeah.
But it's true in life. People, we're trained to give, and give, and that we'll be saved if we just give, right? Give this, give that, and you can make it to heaven or whatever. But we can only give what we have in excess with the experience of gratitude in our hearts for having that experience to be able to give that to you. Otherwise, you're just feeding your ego, that patting yourself maybe subconsciously on the back that I did the right thing. Well, did you? Because you ended up on the emotionally troubled side of that when you didn't have to. You took on. It's okay to help others and take on burdens. Sometimes it's just a bad timing and you got to deal with it. Like you said, some days are 12, 13-hour days or whatever, but that's not the common. It's like, I want to be able to be present with myself and making sure my core values, passions, and beliefs are being taken care of before anyone else's. Because now my tank's full and I can give without resentment. Because if I'm always giving, I'm going to end up resenting someday. Because I'm doing it at the expense of myself continually. So my tank is always sputtering. Well, you go into your relationship and what do you got? You don't have much to give.
Yeah.
And you don't know what you're supposed to be given because there's no agreement. Like, these are things like Amanda apparently needs to go out and do some mountain climbing to keep her mental state right? And be able to go out and enjoy your time and go hanging out on your bike and going on your razor and doing stuff like that. We need to go be with other men. And once you get married in St. George, you're not allowed to. And I swear, we moved in Vegas, we hung out with all sorts of people. And you go to St. George, it's like, oh, we can't do anything. We're always with family. Well, why?
Yeah.
Well, families are forever. Well, no, they're not, because you're not building anything on that foundation. The foundation is null and void because you're not taking care of the person that needs to be supported first.
Yeah.
Because other people can ride on your shoulder. Yeah. And they get so mixed up.
Man.
And we don't communicate that as husband and wife. And usually because when we're first getting married, we're too young. We don't even understand this stuff. And then it's like, okay, you're an extrovert, I'm an introvert. How do we make this work? Okay, one day a week, I'll go out with you. One day a week, you stay home with me, and we'll make that work, because the better you are, the better wife or husband I have. Yeah. So that's still some selfishness there, but it's a productive selfishness or self-care. So selfishness is turned into a negative word, but being in self-care or self-balance is mandatory.
Yeah, I've been kind of saying the same thing for a couple of years to people of you have to be a little bit selfish, like same lines that you're talking about. Like I had this talk with my mother-in-law was kind of asking about our relationship a little bit with me and my wife. And I told her that. I said, she needs to go exercise. She needs to go, well, not that she needs to, she thinks she needs to. She does that.
Edit.
Yeah. So she rides bikes, she goes running, she goes rock climbing, she goes whatever, right? And like she needs that. And in that time, this is how I view it. Like let's say Will's awake, I'm home, I'm taking care of Will. She does that because selfishly she needs it, but I understand that she needs that. And so you go do that, I'll take care of this. And at the other side of it, she knows for me, and this is a whole nother podcast with me and you, I need the work, I need the recognition, I need the paycheck, I need I need all of that, along with helping people and being able to help financially with other people that work for me and giving them a job to be able to have the opportunity to earn money. Like that all builds me up, right? Yeah. And so she does what she does because I'm selfish over here working 14 hours a day. Like that's my selfishness. But I think it's okay as long as there's an understanding about it and as long as there's somewhat of a balance. Mm-hmm. And friend, like I have friends and it works for them, but like I have friends that's all they do is they're together, and I don't agree with it. I couldn't do it, but if it works for them, great. Yeah. But I think that there needs to be some guy time. There needs to be girl time. There needs to be, we go fishing, we go shooting, we go, whatever it is. Half of my guy time is just my friends helping me with safe moves. Yeah. That's where I get a lot of my guy time in, as Tyson and Justin and Alex understand. But yeah, I love what you're saying, because I was kind of realizing that unintentionally was a positive in my relationship. Mm. I didn't know we were doing that, but 5 years down the road, I'd kind of started recognizing it, and I recognized that's part of the reason why we work, and why relationships in general, I think, should be more like that. And being okay with being a little selfish and being okay with your spouse being a little selfish, right?
Yeah, because it's like, well, I don't like to go watch these rom-coms. I hate them. It's like, do you hate your wife? Well, no. Well, go because you love your wife. It isn't about whether you like doing what she or he is doing. You're just there supporting them, and then they have that opportunity to share that with you because you love them and you care for them.
Yeah. And
not get hung up on all this other external stuff.
Yeah, Amanda's a lot better at that than I am. I will admit that. She's game for anything. I mean, Amanda's game.
Yeah, she's awesome.
And she's like we went to, is it motocross or supercross in Vegas?
Supercross.
So we went to supercross, and I was like, hey, me, Tyson, and Marty Party, we're going down to Vegas, and da-da-da. And I think she didn't say it. I don't believe she said it, but I could tell she was kind of like, well, do I get to go? And because that's who she is.
Yeah,
like she doesn't come from a traditional sports family background. Like dribbling a basketball in her family is 50-50, right? And I would go to a Jazz game, and she's like, let's roll. Hey, we're going to go to a Real Salt Lake game. Let's roll. Like we're going to do co-ed softball. She's like, sweet, let's do it. And she's never thrown a ball in her, like a baseball or softball in her life.
Yeah.
And so she's a lot better at that. A little bit because her personality is more that. She's more outgoing. Yeah. She's more trying new things. And I'm more in my comfort zone. My base personality is that. That's something I'm trying to get out of, but my base personality is control, is, being comfortable is whatever, right? as far as like my relaxing time or my what I want to do time with, like I've already said this, but like with business, it's push, push, push. So when I have time, it's like I just want to sit here.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
But yeah, so my relationship's not perfect. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that. But there are times where both ways you have to understand that someone else needs something different, and you have to be okay with it to move forward. I think I'm starting to circle back on the same things I've already said. So maybe it's time to wrap this up. Okay. We're hitting 2 hours right now.
Dang, so I was thinking if we hit 30 minutes,
that's what everyone's like. What are we going to talk about? And I'm all, dude, trust me, just throw the headphones on and we'll go.
This is awesome.
But, is there anything else you want to touch on? Is there anything you want to bring up, or anything you?
No, I think that's missed? We touch base on that, and I just want to comment on you. I've thought about when you did this. It's like, wow, this is huge for you. I mean, you are truly stepping into who you are, and taking ownership of that and being vulnerable.
Yeah.
And there was a time where I sensed you tried to have a humbleness about you, but I could really sense that you were humble because you didn't want what you said about what your family did. You didn't want to be you didn't want to look bad. So if you kept humble about being good when you were bad, then you didn't have to eat any crow that way.
Good point.
But just you watching you and grow, and you've always been a very kind and caring person. And so I want to thank you for allowing me to be part of your life as well. Because, I mean, really, it's kind of cool when you can go hang with your son and his friend, and to get to know you. And you were always open to the process, and I really enjoyed it, even if you did spank me in foosball.
I spanked everybody. It wasn't just you.
It's about me, okay?
No, I appreciate that. Before we ended, I kind of wanted to give you the same sentiment of, whether you knew it or not, and I had a few friends, dads, that were there for me, and when I was going through some things and in my life.
Love you, brother.
Love you too, man. I appreciate you being there for me, and I appreciate you being an example. Gosh, dude, I've only cried on this thing like twice, so this is the thing. Awesome. I guess I shouldn't have said that because maybe people listening won't know, but the video will. But no, I appreciate you being there. I appreciate you being an example. I've looked up to you in multiple ways, and I knew when I was starting to do this. I've said this. I've kind of had an internal list of people I wanted to be on here, and you were definitely on it. So thank you for coming, and thanks for sharing some of your experiences and the knowledge you've gained in the last, how long you been doing the counselor thing?
It's been about 10 years now.
Yeah. The knowledge you've gained the last 10 years to.
It's been an awesome journey.
Kind of jump on here. So anyway, man, appreciate it. Thanks for coming. Thanks for doing it. Thanks for spending 2 hours with your old buddy, Derick.
No kidding. It's about time, huh? We need to go get some food going on. Yeah.
It's been a minute. But yeah, that's it. Hey guys, I hope you pulled something out of this. I know there's a lot of nuggets in there. I'm definitely going to go back and listen to this. And even just getting to know you a little better, a little more of your background. Different. It's been fun.
For me too.
But yeah, if you enjoyed this, share it with someone. Give us a review. I don't do the Apple stuff, but I guess on Apple Play or whatever the Apple app is, you can rate us. You can do comments. Any of that stuff helps us out. Any of that stuff kind of pushes the podcast forward. I've loved the support that we've got. It's kind of crazy, just a kid from Washington, with some buddies and some buddies' dads kind of jump on here and tell some stories. And some of the messages and comments that we've got, I've had some DMs to me and some phone calls to me about people that have listened to a few of our episodes that it's really touched and helped them. Like there's one in particular that a dad called me and just said, "Hey, I just passed this along to my kids and they really needed to hear it." And so it's cool to see that, man. Yeah. Like I just feel I'm just a dude just trying to figure it out, and so it's cool to get on here and have some maybe help one person, and that's worth it.
Yeah. And it's helped me grow. Doing this is my first time to do this. So I'm growing. I had to go through a little bit of a process too. So I thank you for being an example.
Yeah. Appreciate it.
Okay.
All right. See you guys next week.